For some opening shot thoughts on the current gerrymandering controversy, I turn to the parting words of the nation's first president and perhaps most lauded founding father, George Washington, who warned about the perils of political parties. In short, he didn't believe in them. Quote, the alternate domination of one faction over another, sharpened by the spirit of revenge natural to party dissension, which in different ages and countries has perpetrated the most horrid enormities, is itself a frightful despotism. But this leads at length to a more formal and permanent despotism. The disorders and miseries which result gradually incline the minds of men to seek security and repose in the absolute power of an individual, and sooner or later the chief of some prevailing faction, more able or more fortunate than his competitors, turns this disposition to the purposes of his own elevation on the ruins of public liberty. Not mincing words, one can imagine Washington's speech being particularly germane to the issue of gerrymandering, or the drawing of political maps to benefit one party and punish another. As you might have heard by now, Democrats in Texas have fled the state to shut down a special legislative session there where Republicans, at the behest of President Trump, are attempting an unusual move to redraw maps in the middle of the decade to help Republicans gain 5 seats in Congress. Now, the Democrats have fled to a state that many have called the poster child for gerrymandering on the other side, where Democrats have drawn maps that have helped give them a 14-3 advantage in Congress and a supermajority in the General Assembly. And the Texas standoff is leading to an arms race of sorts where blue states are vowing to retaliate. The loser is the American voter, who will continue to see their power to elect a representative of their choice erode. Democracy loses too, as partisan districts will mean more political extremes in Congress, more fighting, more partisanship, and a weaker nation. Now, Texas Democrat Al Green said that this is an inflection point. Indeed, it is. Good government groups for years have attempted to change the system in Illinois and other states so that an independent commission draws the maps based on things like population, demographics, and continuity. In most states, they are drawn with none of those things in mind, only politics. But these bipartisan groups haven't gained traction in Illinois because the issue maybe is too opaque for the public to understand. But this moment requires Republican and Democratic voters to look in the mirror. Any attempt to paint one side as the bad guy and the other as the good guy on this issue is not accurate. It doesn't work. Voters need to hold their own party leaders to account to spur a national movement to fix these egregious maps that have disenfranchised so many voters. So if you're a partisan who takes glee at the misfortune of the other side, who is more loyal to party than to principle, George Washington believes that you are the problem. And it's time to remember the words of America's other great president, Abraham Lincoln. A house divided against itself cannot stand.
Coming up on Paris on Politics.
Texas lawmakers escape gerrymandering battle to take refuge in heavily gerrymandered Illinois and face new threats of violence. A bipartisan Illinois group aims once again to fix the politically drawn maps here to make them more independent.
This is Paris on Politics from Fox 32 Chicago.
Welcome to Paris on Politics. The issue of hyper-partisan gerrymandering is now front and center. Texas Democrats have spent 3 full days in Illinois hiding out and preventing their state's legislature from voting on a heavily partisan remap, and it's pushed by their governor, Greg Abbott, and President Trump. Those Democrats say they're undeterred despite new worries about safety, including a bomb threat at their hotel this morning. St. Charles police responded to a bomb threat at 7:15 a.m. and evacuated 400 people. Police and Kane County Sheriff's bomb squad cased the building and say they did not find any devices. A delegation of about 30 Democratic Texas lawmakers are here to avoid voting on a controversial redistricting bill in that state, which would give Republicans potentially 5 more congressional seats by drawing favorable maps. One of those members, State Rep Ann Johnson, says they've received threats every day they've been here.
On the first day, we had our leadership positions threatened. The second day, we then had financial pressure threatened against us personally. And today we had our lives threatened. I think it shows how desperate Republicans are to try to get this done, get us back in Austin and try to get this thing passed to steal 5 seats for Trump. It has just made me feel more emboldened about the fact we obviously must be doing the right thing.
Johnson notes that Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton said, quote, he would hunt them down to bring them back to the Capitol to vote. She says it's leading to some of the threats. Governor Pritzker says he's asked the Illinois State Police to get involved. He weighed in on the situation while visiting the state fair in Springfield today, saying that he believes a YouTube podcaster and conspiracy theorist has been fanning the flame.
Took a video of where they're staying, posted it, put a map up to point out exactly what hotel they're at. That happened before the bomb threat was issued.
Pritzker used incendiary language of his own to respond to the public safety threat.
They're doing an investigation. They're going to seek out, hunt down, and find the perpetrators.
And now we're joined by Lena DeFloria's political anchor at our sister station, Fox 26 in Houston. She's been up here in Chicago all week following the delegation's moves. You've been in contact with them. What is their reaction tonight after what had happened today?
So I talked to a lot of them, and they say this is not going to deter them, that they are going to hold fast, right? They want to block this redistricting map before the midterm elections next year. So we have a due date of the end of the year to get that map in for the primaries in March, and they say they're willing to wait it out. But they wouldn't specifically say, what does that mean? Does that mean they're willing to wait out the special session, or they're willing to wait out the year to keep the current map on the table?
That would be very expensive because the law there says they're fined $500 a day that they miss. So you're saying they might actually stay away for 6 months until December to just run out the clock?
Well, they've done it before. In 2021, they broke quorum, and they did that for 38 days. But there was no fine at that point. So if they were to wait through December, then you're talking about a fine of $65,000 per lawmaker, and there are limits on where that money can come from. In fact, Attorney General Paxton actually just filed looking for an investigation into a super PAC by Beto O'Rourke, who's picking up the tab for some of the expenses and some of the fines.
What are those limits?
So the limits have to be, they can't be soliciting the money, and then they can't be political contributions or campaign dollars that they're using to finance the breaking quorum.
I remember going to the press conference on Sunday, and they were basically saying, hey, you know, go to a GoFundMe or something like that. I wonder if that would count as soliciting. I want to play a shot from an Illinois Republican senator named John Curran, who is very critical of Democrats being here in Illinois, basically saying that Illinois, on the other side, is a poster child for redistricting. Take a look.
If Texas lawmakers are trying to talk fairness in the partisan process, Illinois is the last place they should be looking to or coming to.
And we've talked about this here, that Illinois maps were drawn by the Democratic Party. They give Democrats a 14-3 advantage in Congress. They've helped give them vast supermajorities in the General Assembly. Do Texas Democrats acknowledge, perhaps, that this is not a state known for fairness in its districting?
Well, they say that, you know, why Chicago, right? They say because they know they have allies here, and they know that it's a typically blue state. I mean, remember that you hosted the DNC last year, and Chicago has hosted more Democratic National Conventions than any other city. So it's not a big surprise that they would come here. But there's actually a movement by a California representative, Kevin Keeley, who wants to stop redistricting across the country, including in his own state. But the interesting thing there is that do you really have that power? Because every state is in charge of its own redistricting, and they all do it differently. Not only that, you were required by federal law after the census to redraw your maps to account for population changes.
And we're going to talk to someone who's leading another independent movement here in Illinois to do that after the census. But that's what makes this strange, is that it's happening mid-decade. This happens in every state after the census, but it is legal. It's not violating any law to do this midstream.
It's legal. There's totally valid reasons why you would do that, whether it be legislative or there be some sort of shift, but it's not common. It does happen, but it's just not something that they normally do. They do it after the census because right now there's no verified population change because there hasn't been a census this year.
Right. And we're looking at the Texas map there. It shows the counties, but then the colors show the districts there. And you've heard Governor Abbott saying that he's going to vacate their jobs. He's going to send authorities to arrest them. Maybe the FBI gets involved. Are those empty threats at this point, or has there been any movement on that?
Who's to say? I mean, there's a lot of talk by everyone, a lot of accusations and finger pointing. So can they do that? Can they pull them out of their jobs? There is a law on the Texas books that say if you abandon your office, you leave your constituents with no representation, that, yeah, they can officially pull you from that seat. But the question is this abandonment? Because the Texas Constitution does allow for breaking quorum. So legally, you're allowed to do that. It's just, you know, where where is the line of abandonment? Who decides? Well, the Texas governor has taken that to the Texas State Supreme Court, and that's 9 justices who are all Republican as well.
And I was just going to say, it sounds like it's going to be a judge or judges that have to decide this. Will they expedite a hearing on this kind of thing?
Hard to say. You know, getting things through courts takes a while. However, the governor did file an emergency motion, and those usually do get expedited a little bit quicker. But you always run into the issue that what if lawmakers are back at the Capitol before this actually gets decided on?
All right, a lot to wade through, Lena DeFlorius. Hope you've enjoyed your time up here in Chicago and the western suburbs where they've been camping out. We appreciate it. Right on cue, a bipartisan group of Illinois civic leaders has launched a new effort to end politically drawn maps in Illinois and put it in the hands of an independent commission. There have been previous attempts to do this. They have failed, but gerrymandering is now a hot topic, and perhaps the movement to end it has new momentum. Joining us is one of the group's attorneys, Michael Dorf. Michael, thanks for talking with us. First of all, tell us what your group is trying to get accomplished here in Illinois.
Well, first, I want to be clear, Paris, of what we're not trying to do. We are not getting involved in congressional redistricting. The Illinois Constitution doesn't permit a citizens movement to get involved in congressional redistricting. What we are trying to do is put some rationalization in the state map, the state senators, the state representatives. And we're trying to get the politics out of it. And you know, we're not naive. We're all grown-ups. We understand that the political process will always be involved in redistricting, even on the state level. But we're trying to get some rationalization in it, and we're trying to get to the point where these days the other side is not an adversary; it's an enemy. And we need to get to the point where members of the State House don't only have to talk to the people that agree with them, where people have to reach across the aisle, where every seat is not a safe Republican seat or a safe Democratic seat, and where we get some comedy back in the legislature. And that's what our movement is trying to do.
Right, and we know the Texas issue is on the congressional level. Congressionally in Illinois, Democrats have a major advantage, but in the State House as well, supermajorities. I posed this question to Governor Pritzker. I mean, aren't these maps just totally politically drawn? And he said, well, they're constitutional, and it just means that Democrats did well in these districts. So when you look at the supermajorities they enjoy in the state, how much of that do you think is due to the fact that the maps were drawn so favorably for them?
Yeah, I think the current map is definitely drawn to favor the Democrats. I think with an absolutely fair map, I think Illinois is still a more Democratic state these days than it is a Republican state. But what we want to do is make more districts that are based more on geography, on contiguousness, and less on who the voters in that district are. Because what we're trying to do is to get back to a point where the voters choose their representatives rather than where the representatives are choosing their voters.
And this is happening in many, many states, both Republican-controlled states and Democratic-controlled states, to gain bigger and bigger power and advantage over the other party. You know, there's the argument right now, though, Michael, Governor Pritzker, Governor Newsom in California saying, well, you know, if Republicans aren't going to play by the rules, if they're going to further gerrymander, then why should Democratic-run states play by those rules, too? Why should they not get in the trenches with them?
Well, then again, I think on the congressional level, right now we have a very different situation, and I don't think that Illinois or other blue states should engage in complete disarmament when the Republicans are going nuclear. We need a national standard for congressional redistricting. But in Illinois, I think we have the opportunity to take that first step to bring back a situation where, again, where members really have to reach across the other side, even within their own districts, within their own elections, and that's the only way we're going to get away from this venal partisanship that the legislatures have entered into.
Tell us, because the movements have been percolating for years to try and change this. They don't gain traction because lawmakers have to, approve to get it on the ballot or get a referendum. But tell us how it would, in 60 seconds or less here, how this impacts the average Illinois voter if this goes through.
If this goes through, there's a very narrow window for the type of referendum that we're trying to get in that the Illinois Supreme Court will accept. If when we get this on the ballot, we're going to have 200, 300,000 voters sign it. When it gets on the ballot, then the voters will have an opportunity to decide if they want to change this system to bring back more trust in their elected representatives, and again, to bring back much more of a sense of comity and civility in our legislature, which is the only way really to get things across.
If you've been watching the show lately or just even opening up your mail, you know that your ComEd bills are going up, way up. So is there something that elected officials in the city of Chicago can do about it? One alderman is saying perhaps there is. And joining us now is 36th Ward Alderman Gilbert Villegas. And Alderman Villegas, thanks for joining us. So you held a press conference today to talk about this issue. What exactly could Mayor Johnson and City Council do to help folks find relief for some of these price hikes?
Well, a couple of things. Number one, I'd like to have a resolution to bring all of the stakeholders to the table. So ComEd, the Illinois Commerce Commission, departments, and quite frankly, the public. I'd like to hear from them as to what it is that ComEd should be doing in order to minimize the impact of the rate increases that has occurred. The second thing is that the city of Chicago has a franchise agreement with ComEd. So in essence, it's a monopoly that's being run in the city of Chicago, and they have a deal with us that has not been finalized. That contract expired over 4 years ago, and it's time for the mayor to step up and bring ComEd to the table to figure out how to finalize the franchise agreement, and within that agreement, have ComEd put forward additional revenue that will help those low-income families, working families that are struggling to pay for their.
And to fill viewers in on that whole franchise agreement, what you're saying is that there is an agreement ComEd has with the city to be the sole provider of power for all the city's residents and businesses. That agreement expired, and so the city has some leverage here to negotiate. Why has there been so many years where there hasn't been a new agreement?
Well, listen, previous Mayor Lightfoot was on the cusp of finalizing an agreement, and then her term ended. But since her term ended, there just hasn't been any further discussions. And so now's the time, especially that the Chicagoans are being impacted by their electricity bill, in some cases 2 to 3 times higher than last year's bill. We have some leverage and we should be using it. It's time for the mayor to step up and put forward a table that really puts ComEd in a position to help put some more dollars on the table to help those low-income families. People should not be choosing to pay for have to pay for eggs and bread or keep the lights on.
And they have put forward a pot of money, something like $10 million to help low-income folks. Is that at least a start?
Yeah, so listen, they put $10 million forward, which is great. They did that in June. It's already been exhausted. We're only in August. So that tells you that there's a need, and it's time for the city to act. Right now, the mayor needs to really work in earnest to get this franchise agreement finalized. But at the same time, while he's talking to ComEd, making sure that they're making investments in the city of Chicago. It's not just providing electricity. There's a price for being the sole provider of electricity, and the people of Chicago need to be able to benefit, whether it's through putting forward programs to help those low-income working families, putting together trade and training programs in order to allow Chicagoans to work in the utility business, allowing minority, women, veteran-owned contractors to work on ComEd projects. I mean, there's just a whole host of things that the city could ask for, but unfortunately, this mayor has not done anything around putting forward and finalizing a franchise agreement. This contract expired 4 years ago. And so we need to make sure that we're holding our utility provider accountable, but at the same time allowing the Chicagoans to benefit.
All right, I got to bring this up. You know, ComEd, this company has pled guilty to bribery, and that involved a massive scandal and all these federal convictions regarding, you know, Mike Madigan and the bribes that he was paid to help them push through a bill that made them tons of money. It jacked up folks' rates. And now they want to jack it up more. They are jacking up more. I mean, should the city look at perhaps just getting rid of ComEd and saying it's time for another provider to maybe bid here? I know that's tough because ComEd owns a lot of the infrastructure here, but you know, they behave terribly. So what about other providers?
Yeah. Well, here, listen. I think that the franchise agreement has expired. If that's the will of the body or the administration to do that, then there's nothing wrong with putting it out for bid and seeing who else would compete for it. But to your point, though, ComEd owns a lot of the infrastructure in place, and so even if you did get a new provider, they would be using ComEd's utilities because it would take them decades in order to put forward their own infrastructure to deliver the services. And I would be concerned about interruption in service. So again, I agree with you that, you know, competition is great, but I mean, this company has been in place for decades, and so I'm not saying that it's impossible, but given the track record of this administration, I wouldn't risk that right now.
Yeah, and this company just has this monopoly, and they have for decades on providing power. I got to ask you, Alderman, the mayor's made some noise about the budget deficit, more than $1 billion, and it seems to be talking about a lot of revenue options, progressive revenue options, corporate head tax. We know how unpopular property tax hikes are with city council, but how about some of these other things like corporate head tax?
Well, listen, I think that, you know, to me, a budget is not just a moral document, but it's a narrative and it's a math equation. First of all, you can only spend what you're getting in, so it has to equal out. But the narrative, I mean, you know, the fact that this administration is talking about property taxes first and not talking about right-sizing government, using technology to create efficiencies, taking a look at TIF surpluses, taking a look at creating new revenue, like I proposed, you know, allowing slots at the airport, which is already currently allowed under state law, that would generate, you know, 20, 30 million. It's not a $1 billion solution, but there isn't one. And so the reality is that this administration needs to take a look at those things first before any type of discussion around property taxes. And quite frankly, this budget has grown tremendously. When you take a look at what the budget was in 2019 and where it is now, it's grown over 40%. And we also have to take a look at those positions that were funded through ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act funds. Are they still there? And if they are, they got to go.
36 Ward Alderman Gilbert Villegas, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Paris.
And finally, tonight, we want this show to be a two-way conversation, so send us your thoughts. You can email us at parisonpolitics@fox.com, and you can also now listen to the show anywhere you stream podcasts. New episodes drop Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. As always, keep up with all the news you need to know at Fox32Chicago.com and with the Fox Local app. We're back Thursday. Have a great evening, everybody.